Welcome to Misfits on Vinyl. My name is Spencer Streichert. I am an actor, comedian, and one of your hosts.
My name is Aaron. I am one of your hosts.
And an actor, and that intro song is super cool. I'm super glad that we have it. It is by the Vidos, who are a band out of Vancouver and Toronto. They like split their time between the two. They're signed with 604 Records right now.
Nice.
Which was started by Chad Kruger. So super fucking crazy.
That is cool.
They fun fact about the Vidos. So I saw them at Rockin' for Dollars like 5 years ago, and they were honestly the best band of the night. They were like, and they were just coming through town.
Nice.
They have such a cool like on stage energy. Their lead singer is just so fucking hype. And they did a cover of Shania Twain's "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," and it was the fucking best. So, yeah, I've been a fan of theirs for a few years. They got some really fucking cool songs, and they just they sent us that, which
like out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
Really cool. Like I was not expecting anything like that.
No.
Ever to happen.
And like honestly, maybe one of the nicest things someone's ever done for me.
Yeah. It honestly made me feel very special.
Yeah.
My heart grew like 4 sizes, maybe 5. I'm actually going in to get a surgery coming up to check if it's okay. No, but it was really special. I really appreciate it. And they sent us a nice little email and said they're fans of the show. And I wasn't familiar with their music, but I've been listening to it since. And,
yeah, dude,
I'm really stoked.
I'm so
how fucking cool.
Oh God, I can't believe it. Like for so many reasons. Like for one, I was like, that was one of those moments where I'm like to find out that they were also fans of us was like a cool moment, because I was like, oh, I'm such a fan of you guys. Like, oh, this is so cool. But yeah, no, I wanted to give a couple of plugs, because they got an album coming out in March. You can pre-order the vinyl right now. I'm doing that this week. We're going to talk about it on the podcast. We're going to probably fucking have them on the podcast.
Plug the shit out of them.
We're going to plug the shit out of them. They got a new single out right now called Pressure. It's fucking great. Their single just before that, Boom Shakalaka, is one of my favorite.
I really enjoyed that, actually.
Oh,
that's
my
one of
God.
the first ones. I think it's the top one on their Spotify.
Yeah.
That's one of the first songs I listened to after we got the new intro song.
Oh,
and I was
my
like,
God.
This is fucking really good.
It's so good.
Yeah, no, I was really
Boom
impressed.
Shakalaka, I'ma hit you like a psycho. I don't even know if that's the lyric.
I don't think it is, but I was ready to dance.
I was, you know what though? Like, Perfect Stranger, also a great fucking track. It's an older one, but like, that is a recommendation from me, because who doesn't like a good song about a blowjob?
I also really like their music videos.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I was looking through their YouTube and stuff like that. They have some great music videos. They seem like a fun group to be around.
Yeah, they're kind of like that big goofy energy, and I fucking love it.
I like it too. But one thing you said they split their time between Toronto and Vancouver. That sounds fucking expensive, dude.
Yeah, well, dude, they lived in Toronto in a van for like a year.
Okay, that doesn't sound as expensive.
Yeah,
no.
But they literally were like,
cold.
to get good at like doing live shows. They just did live shows every night and lived out of a van.
That's cool.
And I was like, that's pretty dope. That's like a stand-up way of doing things.
Nah, that's nice. That's
super
cool.
dug it. So shout out to the Vidos. Check them out on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. Order their album. We're gonna probably have them on the podcast.
Yeah, and I mean
soon.
they.
You can spell it by it's Vidos. S.
Nice.
Vidos.
With the THE.
With the THE at the start.
It's, like we said, it made us feel very special, but it's also inspired us to, maybe pump out a little more content for our intro and do some more things. We got a couple things in the works. We've been working on a new logo, which I'm sure will come out soon. And think about doing intros and maybe doing some YouTube videos down the road.
And we got some stickers on the way too.
Yes,
sir. We got stickers with both our OG logo and the new logo, because we got well, I'm not gonna spoil the logo yet, the new one, because I feel like we gotta fucking like when we have the stickers. That's
we'll do a big reveal.
We'll do a big reveal, but there's a reason why we got two, because there's circle and squares. I think it's gonna be fucking super sick. I was in Peace River this last weekend. We got some new listeners in Peace River.
Nice.
Yeah, I got rid of all of the stickers that I had ordered.
Fuck yeah, dude.
So we got some listeners out of Peace River now. Those shows were super fucking fun. Very weird. Because I was not expecting that. I went to the Peace River Museum.
Ooh.
During the day.
What was that like?
It was fun.
Yeah.
I love, my favorite thing to do when I go to like small towns is go to a museum because I'm like, what the fuck is there to learn about this place? I learned about this boat, and this is like the funniest thing. So there used to be a boat called the D.A. Thomas.
Okay.
And it was originally built for like hauling like coal and all this shit up and down the Peace River. And then they were like, you know what? This would actually work way better as like a luxury like steamboat. So they converted it, and it had like, you know, all these like private bedrooms and like a parlor and like, you know, like there was all these dances that would go on and stuff. And it could accommodate like 300 people.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And they had that on going up and down the Peace River, except it was too big for the Peace River, and it kept getting fucking stuck on the sandbars, and then they'd have to go and get somebody to tow it out with a fucking tugboat.
So it was a stationary boat.
It was a stationary boat, and then they just destroyed it. They didn't even like leave it docked somewhere.
No.
They were just like, fuck this. And it cost a lot of money too.
Yeah, that's kind of like back in Newfoundland, there's a place called Harbor Grace, and there's literally a boat that's been stuck in the harbor for like fucking like 80 years, dude. It's called the Kyle. It's been stuck in the fucking harbor, and you drive in Harbor Grace, and there's literally just a giant boat like half tilted right in the harbor, like
fuck, that is
rusting
funny.
And fucking
Dude, that's so funny. Like the barnacles underneath that thing must be fucking huge.
It's like one of the main attractions to go to Harbor Grace. So, like, if Peace River's looking for a new tourism plan, like just stick a boat in the river and leave it there.
Yeah, take that over your 3 bridges.
Yeah. And your museum.
It was also the Christmas parade when we were there, which I
Ooh.
thought was funny because I was opening for Connor Christmas. And so then Connor went on stage and he was like, thank you guys for throwing a parade for me. All right, so we gotta crack our beers first. As is tradition. So this is the Dirty Hipster. It's a rice lager. I don't think we've had this one before, have we? We had a different rice lager when Brittany Lysing was
From
on
our unofficial sponsor
of the podcast, Cabin Brewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a collab, Sam?
Yeah, it's with Routine, which is a kind of hipster hygiene company. Like they do all organic, like deodorants and soaps.
Oh, so I could use this to wash my balls.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's soap in this.
Deodorant called Dirty Hipster.
Ooh.
And it's got the same packaging, and it's really nice. It's like a charcoal deodorant.
I feel like Dirty Hipster is an oxymoron. Because, like, I'm a hipster and I shower twice a week.
Well, it's all about, like, if you shampoo your hair too much, bro, it gets, like, you know, a little too dry. You get dandruff.
That's true.
You know? So just don't bathe at all.
I had a friend recently say that one of their family members quit wearing deodorant and everything and shampoo and all of that. And they smell fucking horrible.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't.
All right, cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
All right. Oh, that was a nice saucy one. All right,
clink.
so before we get into the pod, Aaron's got something to talk
Yeah,
about.
so like I have mentioned it a handful of times, and you know, Kanye West. It's difficult for me to say, but you know, I can no longer say I love Kanye West. And for anybody, I'm sure everybody knows, but people that aren't following, he's a Nazi.
He's a fucking Nazi.
It's kind of spoiled like his entire discography for
Really
me.
fucked up black skinhead for me.
Yeah, it ruined everything for me, honestly. It's really sad, and it's tough to see, you know, not that I would say like he was a role model, but I looked up to him, but you know, someone that you've listened to his music and been a fan of, and like certain things in the past, like, yeah, he's done crazy ass shit and said crazy ass things.
Yeah.
But never to this extreme level.
Well, there's also a difference between like jumping up on stage and ripping a 16-year-old's award out of her
Yeah.
hand and fucking
promoting genocide. Yeah.
That's where it's like there's two sides to it, and especially like it's bad when Alex Jones is the voice of reason
I know,
to somebody.
dude.
Like it like watching that made me realize like, oh, Alex finally figured out what it's like when he's being interviewed by Joe Rogan. Like he's just like he has to be like, no, stop saying that.
Well,
like,
when the guy that is saying that the government is turning the frogs gay thinks your ideas are a little fucking crazy, I think you've crossed a line. So in closing, fuck Kanye West. I can no longer listen to Kanye West the same. It's been a really hard loss for me.
No, I feel you, because like I mean when I was like graduation came out when I was I would have been in like grade 7, and like that was like a soundtrack to a lot of my youth. Same with like 808s and Heartbreaks and Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It's really sad that now I'm like I've been like, as I've been walking around, like I'll be listening to Spotify, right, and I've had to like be like, well, unlike this one, like I'm just putting on my
I was in the top 5% of Kanye West listeners on my Spotify Wrapped.
No.
So this is a really tough loss for me. Like the stretch from my Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy to probably The Life of Pablo. Like I have so much rotation in that little span of his career, and then even Donda I really like. Jesus is King can fuck off too, but yeah, it's sad. So in closing, like I said, fuck Kanye West. I can no longer support Kanye West. He's no longer my boy.
Yeah,
so.
I guess
we're Swifties from now.
I guess
from now on going forward.
I guess you could say that we are now nay.
Instead of yay, yes. Yes. We are now yay.
Okay, so so that all makes sense. I feel like one thing that we totally forgot to mention, because we touched on it briefly at the start of the episode, but because Aaron's an actor, and
yes.
And so
you wanted to talk. You warned me you're going to talk about this.
I did, yes. So here's the thing. So a friend of the podcast, Cayley Wreggitt, she has a show right now at Lunchbox Theater in Calgary. Mm-hmm. If you haven't, go check it out. It actually is super fun. It's called Home for the Holidays. I've seen it twice now. Nice. I saw it on opening. I got industry tickets.
There you go.
Just gave me free tickets, and then Siobhan and I went last night.
Mm-hmm.
Really fun, really funny, good for the whole family. Like it's like it's something where like when you say good for the whole family, everyone actually will enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh yeah, it's a kid's show, or oh yeah, it's fucking, like it actually is a really good show.
I can confirm this.
You can confirm this because Aaron originated the role of Nick in the original production of it before it was a musical.
So we're going through my history as an actor. This was my first university credit. I didn't even know this was going on until I saw your story, because like I'm not really on social media or anything like that, but I have Facebook because I have to use it for work, and Spencer posted a story about going to the show. Yeah, I did that when I was in my first year of university. I actually probably have a good photo of the original cast holding up, like we used to have. You remember we had like a movie poster sign made? Yeah. So once again, this is one of my roles. This is my second. That was my second biggest role behind the whole Jon Snow thing that's going on right now.
That's true. Which we still can't talk about, but when we can, I'm so excited to talk about it. I really want that to just be clipped. Like, I just want that one thing to be clipped, and then that's on TMZ.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really happening. Like,
it is. So
it's like one of those things, like I have a LinkedIn, and I put a podcast host on my LinkedIn. Like, we haven't made a fucking dollar, but I put it in as one of my jobs. So
I think we've all actually lost money doing this.
I don't think we've made any money between the beers and Sam already had the equipment, but the beers and the coffees and fucking stickers.
The stickers and which, I mean, in all fairness though, gonna make that up in the future, because when we get, once we become the #1 English-speaking music history podcast in Canada, as well as Chile.
There you go.
Then we will have all of the dollar.
Yeah, no, we did get a really lucrative offer from Spotify, like similar to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
So he got 110 million. We got 110 pennies.
It's
was
true.
our offer. So that's like what, $1.10?
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
And you know what? That's better than Spotify has ever paid me for my comedy albums.
And they're not going to delete any of our episodes.
No.
So yeah, our Kanye West episode and our Alex Jones episode is going to stay on. So.
Oh fucking hell! God. Okay, yeah. You know what?
Our $1.10 Spotify offer.
$1.10 Spotify offer.
To be clear, we have to pay them $1.10.
Yeah,
they're not going to pay us.
Our offer was in order for you to have your content on our platform, please pay us.
You actually have to pay us. Yeah,
you're terrible and we hate you.
And it's $1.10 a minute. So our podcasts are gonna get shorter, honestly, because we don't have that much money. So, speaking of the podcast, should we talk about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, we should introduce the album. So,
yes, sir.
This week, well, every week on Misfits on Vinyl, we review an album. Mm-hmm. It's one of our favorites or an album that we think is pretty cool. This week, one of my personal favorites. I'm super excited to talk about this one. It is Chet Bakers sings "It Could Happen to You."
Mm-hmm. Woohoo! Woo!
All right.
Nice, good placement.
That was solid. Okay, so this album was released November 3rd, 1958.
Mm-hmm.
It was recorded in August of 58.
Good year.
Good year. Good year. Honestly.
Great year.
Great year. One of the best years.
One of the best years.
One of the best years. Riverside Records, who was the company that released it, they were an American jazz record company and label, and they played a huge role in jazz for that decade. Mm-hmm. They recorded with everyone from like Miles Davis to Nat King Cole. Like they kind of had their hands in all of the different elements of jazz at the time.
This was right in, like, I'd say, right in the I guess coming towards the tail end, but also like still where jazz was really, really popular.
Yeah.
The jazz man was still a thing. Some of the biggest musicians were jazzmen. So this was kind of right in that peak time for jazz, and the 30s, 40s, 50s.
It was like right when like jazz was no longer the enemy either. Mm-mm. Like, like rock and roll was now
kind of skirted.
Yeah,
it.
they were the bad boys.
Which is something I was talking about with Sarah. Is like surprisingly, like the bad boys of like the 40s and the early 50s were like playing like the softest, most like fucking relaxing music, and they're in their free time they're shooting up heroin and fucking alcoholics.
Girl, I wanna take you on a date. Scoobity boo boo doo boo doo.
You make me feel so young. It's like he's actually singing about heroin, I think, in that song. But like it's so funny that the bad boys of the time were singing like really like contemporary relaxing music, like shit you hear in elevators. Like it's really fucking funny.
Dude, this is stuff that like hospitals play.
Yeah, I know.
Speakers.
When you call like a company and they put you on hold, it's like some of the shit they put on. Yeah.
Oh fuck. Okay, so back to the album. It's an album of covers of pop songs done jazz with a real melancholy to his vocals and generally upbeat lyrics. It's good, easy listening, like we said, and amazing trumpeting, which was what he was known for. So it was listed on Billboard's long play albums under jazz, only 3 categories at the time on the Billboard charts.
Wow.
It was popular, jazz, and classical, and they had only started the top 200 2 years prior. Okay, 3 of the songs on this album, Do It the Hard Way, My Heart Stood Still, and Dancing on the Ceiling, were originally written by Richard Rodgers, an American composer who made dramatic musicals that focused more on the characters than previous musicals. He wrote 42 Broadway musicals and composed over 900 songs between 1919 and 1979.
Wow.
He was also the first person to win an EGOT. Oscar, Emmy, Grammy, Tony.
Nice.
He fucking did it. He also co-wrote The King and I, Sound of Music, and Oklahoma. So super interesting that he was a part of that. Not hands-on, but that his songs were covered in a way by as we have already mentioned, the bad boy,
the bad boy of jazz.
Bad boy of jazz,
the jazz man.
All right, the piano on the
the jazz man.
the jazz man. I can do jazz as best as you can. I'm the jazz man.
I'm a jazz man.
I'm the jazz man.
Jazzy man.
You know what type of tea I like? Jazz man.
You know what my girlfriend's name is?
Jazz.
Well, it's actually Sarah. I was just testing you, dude. You missed. You missed hard. Anyways.
Okay.
Anywho, I think it's gonna be one of those episodes.
You know what? I'm all for it. I fucking love it.
Yeah, we both had hard weeks.
We both had hard weeks.
Loose. Yeah, fuck yeah.
You gotta let loose. Fucking. You gotta wank off a little bit.
Yeah, sure did. That's what we did before the episode.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, the one episode we stood in a circle and we whacked each other with a ruler on the peepees.
Yeah.
And before this episode, we stood in a circle and we just
whacked each other's peepees. Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Over a cookie, yeah.
Over a cookie. Now,
my next acting role is in Blue Mountain State. Yeah, no.
Who? Okay, so this is a contest for the podcast. Who do you think ate the cookie? Anyways. We're a bunch of bad boys. You know why? Because we're jizz man.
Jizz man, even better, dude. Oh, I stepped on your punchline. That was good. That was good. I'm sorry. I stomped on your punchline.
Okay. I deserved that. Okay,
I like
so
that one, though.
the piano was done by Kenny Drew, whose playing style was described by the Biographical Encyclopedia of Jazz as precise and a combination of bebop-influenced melodic improvisation and block chords, including refreshingly subtle harmonizations. Previously, he recorded 2 albums with John Coltrane, who was a Jazz Hall of Fame inductee and Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award winner. So between 1955 and 75, he recorded 20 albums with Dexter Gordon. Now, Dexter Gordon, this is super interesting. His father was one of the first black doctors in Los Angeles, and Duke Ellington was one of his patients.
Ooh.
And so he was a jazz musician who worked with everyone from like Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, etc. And he was an early influence of Coltrane's, which is super crazy that he then, speaking of, Kenny Drew, there's like a lot of connections to John Coltrane there. Kenny himself recorded and released 46 of his own albums.
Damn, dude.
That was ones where he was the lead man, not even the side man.
Wow.
Which I guess that's something that we should probably explain. So in jazz, because there would be like a quartet or a trio or whatever, there would be a lead man. It wouldn't be like necessarily a lead singer. Like Miles Davis and Chet Baker, for a lot of their careers, they weren't even singing.
Yeah.
So you have the lead man, and that's like basically the headliner who everyone's like, oh, this is the guy that we're coming to see. So 46 of the albums, he was the lead man on.
That's crazy,
which
dude.
is fucking insane.
That's one thing I kind of noticed about jazz in general. There's quite a bit, like most of the artists have quite a bit of albums. They pump out a lot of music.
Yeah.
Whether they are, like we said, the lead man or they're a part of a quartet, they're always recording. It's pretty incredible.
Well, and like how many of these songs do you think that they would have in their rotation regularly? Like a lot of them are improvised in the studio.
Yeah. Which is, I guess, is like, if like even in, like they talk about it in La La Land, is how that's the beauty of jazz, is the improvisation, that you could, everything could be different every night. They could be playing the exact same, song at the start, and then when they start improvising, it gets crazy.
Yeah.
It's like something that doesn't happen much in other styles of music, a little bit in some experimental rock bands, like the Grateful Dead does a lot of improvising in their shows, but jazz is known for it. It's one of the main things of jazz. It's pretty fucking cool.
The Grateful Dead also changes their set list every fucking night.
I know.
Which is wild.
And if you see them like 2 nights in a row, you can hear the same song but played completely fucking differently.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something later, actually, but I am going to New York in June.
Ooh.
And Dead and Company is playing. I'm trying to get my hands on some tickets. So if I
that'd
can
be
go,
so sick.
Yeah, John Mayer's leading them now, but Bob Weir's still in it, and a couple of the original members are still in it.
Oh, shit.
But yeah, John Mayer sings all the tunes in it, so that'd be really fucking
That'd be
sick.
really
It's
fucking
It's
cool.
at the City Field, so where the Mets play.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, this will be pretty fucking
Fuck,
sick.
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, if I can go, it'd be wicked.
Okay, so another person who is super influential, on this album. Drums for 10 of the tracks were done by Philly Joe Jones, who Miles Davis stated was his favorite drummer, and he looked for Joe's style in other drummers when they played. The other tracks had drummer Danny Richmond, who later drummed for Joe Cocker and Elton John.
That's cool.
Which is fucking...
The drums are great on this, too. Like,
yeah.
Also, one of the main components of jazz is the style of drumming, but the drums really stand out in this.
The drums are like and like honestly like the some of the like freestyle piano things are just insane. Okay, so it was produced by Riverside record founder Bill Grauer, who was influential in jazz and worked with all the big names, including Miles Davis and Duke Ellington. He has over 362 production credits to his name. Wow. Which is nuts. And then it was engineered by Jack Higgins, who seemed to work exclusively in jazz. He also had, like, I think it was 177 like credits as an engineer. On a few tracks on It Could Happen to You, Chet Baker plays no trumpet whatsoever, opting to scat in place of an instrumental solo, which is kind of interesting. He was known for the trumpet, and when we get into the artist, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but he was known for the trumpet, and this was the second album that he sang on. The first album Chet Baker sings was the one that had his very famous rendition of My Funny Valentine.
Yep.
And he always has this like haunting fucking essence to his vocals, which is super impressive. But then it's really funny when you hear a song where he's like skiddly boo boo doo boo
I really liked his voice. I was impressed. It kind of like, I mean, I guess I was like, oh, it reminds me of like Lou Reed's voice. But obviously Lou Reed sounds like him, not vice versa, right? Because Lou Reed was around after. But yeah, I like his tone of voice. Like the tone of it reminded me quite a bit of Lou Reed. He's singing, but it's almost got a little bit of a talking sort of tone to it as well in certain aspects. I really, really liked his voice.
It's so reserved. Like you listen to it and you're just like even when he does let loose on a note, it's still pretty fucking like toned down.
I really like how well he pairs with the music, like just like it almost is like a back and forth sort of, like he really like adds quite a bit to the music. He plays, doesn't sound like he's working against it or anything like that, or it just his voice suits it so perfectly.
Yeah. And it's crazy that he wasn't a singer before that.
No, like, and I don't even think it, like one thing shocked me too, it didn't remind me really of a classic voice either. Like it's something you could hear in, like if you were to just say switch styles of music with it, like I could see it being in like a indie rock band or a folk band or something like that. His style of singing, like it really transferred over really well to modern music. Didn't feel like I was listening to like a classic singer or like a schooner or something like that, the regular sort of old school style of singing in vocals.
Well, and it's also like for a jazz musician, I think at the time, you know, like a lot of us think of like big band, right?
Yeah.
If you think of a singer, you think of like a Frank Sinatra or like fucking Sammy Davis Jr. You're thinking of somebody that's singing like that, right? You're not thinking about like somebody who's taking it down so much that the audience has to pay attention.
It's subtle, and I really, really, really liked it. I was surprised because I wasn't as familiar as you are. You've listened to it before. I've heard the name, but I wasn't familiar. I never really listened to any of his music, so it really took me off guard when I listened to the opening track.
Well, what I think is really funny is, so I remember, like, because I had this album when we lived in Toronto, and I remember I showed it to you, and then you showed me Daniel Johnston. Yeah. And it was like, there is a little bit of a similarity in that they're not like what you would think is a classically like a classic singer. Yeah. But there's so much like emotion even when the words aren't his own that they just fucking it plays through. No,
I was really impressed. Yeah, I do remember us listening to that, and like at that time that's why I showed you Dan. I was really into like the Outsider style of music. Like, I was into the Daniel Johnsons. I was listening to like different styles of country music and things like that. But this really stood out as unique. It's a unique for the time, I think.
And like honestly, like you mentioned, tail end of jazz. Like this is like tail end of when it was like really popular. All right, so let's talk about Chet Baker himself. So he was born December 23rd, 1929 in Yale, Oklahoma. He's known for major innovations in cool jazz that led him to have the nickname Prince of Cool. Which is super fucking cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, find another adjective. No, cool.
His father was a professional guitarist, and his mother was a pianist who worked in a perfume factory. Due to the Great Depression, his father, although very talented, had to quit music and take up a regular job. In 1940, when Baker was 10, his family relocated to Glendale, California. He began his musical career singing in a church choir, so he did have like singing experience way before he was singing on albums. His father gave him a trombone when he was young, which was replaced with a trumpet because the trombone was way too big for him. Which is maybe one of the best things that could have happened, because after 2 weeks there was a noticeable progression in his playing. Peers called Baker a natural musician to whom playing came effortlessly. He received some musical education at Glendale High School, but he left school at the age of 16 in 1946 to join the U.S. Army. He was assigned to Berlin, Germany, where he joined the 298th Army Band. Now, after leaving the Army in 1948, he studied music theory and harmony at El Camino College in Los Angeles, but he dropped out during his second year to re-enlist. He became a member in the 6th Army Band at the Presidio in San Francisco, and he spent his time in clubs such as Bop City and Black Hawk. Now, he was discharged from the Army in 1951 and decided to pursue a career in music. Now, what I want to mention about this, because I read this both in his autobiography and in the documentary I watched this week. He got discharged from the Army because he wanted to pursue music, but he couldn't fucking just get out of it, right? So he went to the Army psychiatrist, and he needed to find a way that he could get out because he was crazy, but not too crazy that they wouldn't let him roam the streets. So what he did was, when everybody would be taking a shit in the latrines, he'd go across the street and shit in the bushes.
That's fucking funny.
And then the person was like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's like, "I just don't want to sit with other people while I poop." And they were like, "You can't be in the Army.
You're done, son.
You're done, son.
No more shitting in the bushes.
No more poop in the bush for you."
I'm gonna remember this. If something is to go down and I get drafted, I'm fucking taking my sock and heading to the bushes.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
I'm going to wipe it and then put it back on.
Yeah. Even better. They might send you to military jail, dude, if you do that.
Dude, that's cruel punishment for the enemy.
Stick it on a stick. Fucking outside, the fucking Apocalypse Now, they got the heads on the stick. You just got a shitty sock on a stick. It's intimidation factor, dude.
Dude, it'd be like, did you ever watch Ed, Ed and Eddie?
No, I never. Oh, Ed, and Eddie, yeah.
It'd be like Plank, but it's a shit sock. And you're like, sock!
if anybody listening, the U.S. government need any ideas for torture at Guantanamo Bay? Shit sock. Telling you, fuck waterboarding. Fuck waterboarding. Shit sock on a stick. I'm telling you.
Holy
We
fuck!
should patent that shit, dude. That's a great idea. Great idea,
dude. And like the best thing is like that's the type of torture where like you could have somebody in a cage and you just stick the stick in and you poke them with the shit stick.
And if you want to take it up like another level, like make sure you give someone that's lactose intolerant like fucking some serious cheese, dude. And then you fucking like give them stinky cheese. It's gonna double the stink. I'm telling you,
dude. That would be my shits.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have a problem with lactose too. We don't get along.
Okay, so moving.
Gordita Crunch.
You know what I love about Taco Bell? It's the same going out as it is going in.
Gross.
Okay, so after he left the Army, he performed with Vito Musso and Stan Getz before being chosen by Charlie Parker for a series of West Coast engagements.
That's sick. Charlie Parker's fucking awesome. Dude.
Fucking incredible.
Yeah, that's cool.
In 1952, he joined the Jerry Mulligan Quartet and attracted considerable attention because rather than playing identical melody lines in unison, they would just complement each other and counterpoint each other with like, and they would anticipate what the other one's gonna do. So their whole thing would be improvised, and they'd have two people like just going fucking ham on the trumpet.
That's sweet.
Which is pretty cool. So My Funny Valentine, which was a solo with Baker, it became a hit, but it became associated with Chet Baker, and then he recorded it. Later. With the quartet, Baker was regularly performing at Los Angeles jazz clubs such as the Hague and the Tiffany Club. Now, in 1952, Jerry Mulligan was arrested on drug charges, so Chet formed his own quartet. Now, it's interesting because something that I found out in the documentary, there was a little bit of jealousy from Jerry Mulligan because Chet Baker was such a good trumpeter, and he was getting a lot of the attention in like basically anywhere that they would go. He was he was really fucking good looking too. Like he had that James Dean good look, so it was like. It was kind of like he had everything. He had the talent, he had the looks, he had the charm. So he was a lead man, but he was the side man. And, as you know, like if you have a fucking supporting actor that can outshine the fucking lead,
You have problems.
You have problems.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's something like we don't have to worry about because we're both untalented and not handsome. So
Yeah.
we don't really have any jealousy issues.
Dude,
here.
we're get to know you people. We know what we are. We know where we stand.
But that's cool. I don't know if you put it down because I don't always read through. I like to be surprised. But he did do some movies as well because he was recognized for his good looks.
He was, yes.
Yeah, he had a chiseled jawline and fucking.
I actually have that down in like 2 beats here.
There you go.
So I'm gonna rip through these other
Look
things.
how
So
natural that is.
He forms a quartet, released popular albums between 53 and 56. He won the Reader's Poll at Metronome and Downbeat magazines, beating out trumpeters Miles Davis and Clifford Brown. In 1954, Readers named him the top jazz vocalist, and Pacific Jazz Records released Chet Bakers Sings, which increased his popularity and drew some criticism because people were not, like, at the time, they were like, I don't like how he sings. Which, you know, as we know now, like we've talked about it, he's got a fucking great voice and very unique.
A little ahead of his time, I think.
So, he made his acting debut
There you go.
in the film Hell's Horizon, which was released in the fall of 55. It was a war film that was panned for its plot. Now, what I think is really interesting about it, he actually had, like, you know, the history in the army, so, like, he knew the role, like, he knew the character and everything. I watched the movie. It's not that bad. It's like it's typical of, like, 50s fucking B movies, you know? What I think is really funny is there's a scene in it, though, where, like, he's playing the trumpet because they had to fucking make him play the trumpet. He's playing the trumpet, and this young kid wants him to play the trumpet, and then this old guy gets up, and he's all pissed off, and he's like, fucking stop playing the trumpet. Something that was really interesting, he declined a studio contract, though, because he wanted to tour as a musician.
Yeah, I read that, too. Yeah, that was interesting. I have a quick question. Is it better or worse than, like, you ever see Hacksaw Ridge?
Oh, it's better than Hacksaw Ridge.
Because one thing I always like to talk about when more movies come up is the ridiculous scene where Andrew Garfield, like, soccer volleys a grenade in Hacksaw Ridge. Someone throws a grenade, he gets up and he fucking, like, kicks that shit at midair. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's fucking so funny. I always, if I have an opportunity to bring that up, I bring it up because that was, like, nominated for Oscars. It's just like fucking movie sucks.
It was not a good movie.
No, Mel Gibson directed that bad boy.
He's not a good director.
No, or a good person. He's got the same Kanye problem.
Yeah, he's got the. But you know what? Like, what if all those canceled people like got together and made a movie? It'd be really, really.
It'd be some really good Nazi propaganda.
Yeah,
it would.
It like Kanye West might play Jesus in a fucking remake of Passion of the Christ. Okay.
Jesus walks.
Yeah, right.
I would kill to see that.
Jesus walks with me.
You just know too. He wouldn't be able to read the fucking lines.
No, dude, he'd go off on a tangent.
He'd be like, "I am Jesus Christ. I'm so happy that I'm Jesus Christ. I'm here for your sins." Just like, oh Jesus, man.
Well, at least he'd have something to actually blame on the Jews. Because
my God,
they did in fact crucify Christ. So
fucking hell.
Was it the Jews or was it the Romans?
It was the Romans.
It was the Romans.
It was the Romans. Yeah.
I went to Catholic school, but I did not follow.
That's fair.
Yeah, I did not follow.
I was an altar boy, so I got like stupid biblical knowledge.
So it was the Romans, or what?
It was the Romans, yeah. Which, like, Judaism was at the time like a huge religion, obviously, and he was like trying to get Jewish people to follow his religion and basically like take what they were teaching and go further with it. But because of the backlash with that, you know, it was like they were like, fuck no. But the Romans were the ones that killed him.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Okay, so something I got to mention about Chet Baker.
Go ahead.
So this is like what I thought was really interesting. He had like the exact same smile as me. Like we both had fucked up teeth. And I thought it was really cool because there's movies like in a lot of the movies, like he's missing fucking teeth, but he's like this handsome guy, so like you don't even like notice it. But I'm like, what a fucking sign of the times. Like, you know, like I would have been a fucking movie star in the 50s.
Oh, dude, if you go back and look at some of like the old movie stars from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, like some of them are fucking ugly, dude. There's a couple of like the dudes that are like, oh yeah, like they're like handsome dudes, like young Marlon Brando and James Dean and shit like that, but some of them are not good looking.
Dude,
the women were always good looking and
I'm
beautiful.
named after. Spencer Tracy.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird looking dude.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that were not like fucking. Was it Clark Gable with the mustache? There a couple of them were weird looking motherfuckers.
A couple of them were very strange.
Yeah.
Okay, so drugs for him started in the 50s.
Yeah.
And this is something that I read in his autobiography. He would sometimes pawn his instruments to go and get drug money. So he's never had the same trumpet for
he had serious fucking drug problems, dude.
Serious drug
yeah,
problems.
like
and it's
bad.
crazy because like reading about it in his autobiography, he even like, you know, at the time that he wrote that, I think it was like the early 80s. It was a memoir, not an autobiography, but it's an easy read. If anybody wants to like read it, I would say do it because I read it in like 2 nights before bed. He talks about it with such a fucking like romanticized like rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Like he would be like, yeah, like I'd be playing the jazz club and there'd be an arrest warrant out for me, so I'd hop out through the back door, get in the car, and go to another club. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Well, the problem is he probably. Well, I know he wrote that memoir. He was still fucking using drugs. Like literally his whole life, he fucking.
He
used
did not.
drugs.
He never stopped.
No.
Which is also crazy when we get to like this bit in a second here. But soon after signing with Riverside Records, Baker was arrested twice. The first arrest involved a stay at the Lexington hospital and then imprisonment at Rikers Island for 4 months on drug charges. He was also imprisoned in Italy for a year on drug charges and expelled and extradited from the UK and Germany on drug charges. Now, the one in Italy, he had left one of his partners. He had multiple, like, he was it seemed like he was always monogamous, but he would fucking leave people really quickly.
Yeah.
He left someone for this Italian woman, and she waited, like, while he was in prison. She waited for him for a year. He gets out. They have a kid. Like, he had a lot of kids. Like, he had a fuck ton of kids. Like, he had, like, 5 kids, I think.
It's like NBA basketball player numbers, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
He was fucking putting up those points.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, so now in 1966, this is where it gets crazy. Baker was beaten, probably while attempting to buy drugs, after performing at the Trident restaurant in Sausalito. That's in California, I think.
Yeah.
Sausalito. In the film Let's Get Lost, he said that an acquaintance attempted to rob him, but backed off, only to return the next night with a group of men who chased him. He fucking ran and got into a car that was parked on the street. These guys all surrounded the car, and then the people inside the car fucking threw him out of the car. Like, they were like, no, fucking get out. So these guys just beat the fuck. Like, literally all these guys had to do was drive away.
Yeah, this was like the big turning point in his life. It seems to be the big moment in his life where everything kind of went downhill until a little later on where he had a bit of a resurgence. But, like, this is where the drug use and, you know, the constant years of, like, living the fast life kind of caught up with him.
They definitely did. And it was it was heavy hitting because he was literally going to buy drugs and then fucking...
And the consequence of this was he lost all of his teeth.
Yep.
And he couldn't play the trumpet anymore.
Yeah, he received cuts. Several of his teeth were knocked out, but, like, as in several, we mean pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Like, and then... okay, this incident has often been misstated or otherwise exaggerated, partially because of his own unreliable testimony on the matter. Now, it's interesting because in the documentary and in the book, he had 2 different accounts of the incident, which is fucking...
So there's certainly probably more to the story, like
Yeah.
whether or not he, like, ripped somebody off or whatever it may be. I feel like there's more to the story than what he's saying.
Yeah, I feel like there definitely is. So the breaking of his teeth ruined his embouchure, which made, like you said, he was unable to play the trumpet. And after the mugging, his jaw was reshaped. He had to reteach himself the trumpet. And, okay, so this is a quote that you brought up, which was from NPR, right?
Mm-hmm. A 2016 article from NPR where they talk about his career later on and kind of what happened after the incident and how it changed him.
Okay, so he's more breathy at times, and the tone carries a certain richness. When he opens his mouth, the true mood dawns. This is the voice of a 57-year-old who sounds like he's lived enough, and been heard enough to be 80. When Baker sings, all the things that you promised with your eyes, I see in hers too. You wonder how many nights he spent looking at himself in the mirror, wondering where the promise in his own eyes had gone. Now, it's so depressing because, like, listening to his older stuff, like, specifically in the documentary Let's Get Lost, you can still hear a little bit of it, but dentures weren't really good at the time.
No.
And so he kind of sounds like when my grandma tries to sing. She's got the dentures in her mouth. And so it's like he's singing, and it is beautiful, but there is that, like, you can hear it, right?
This was specifically about, like, in the 80s when he was doing some stuff with Elvis Costello and things like that. That was kind of from that time period that they were talking about in this article about Chet Baker.
And Elvis Costello was a huge fan.
Yeah, and they were buddies, and Elvis kind of helped him. I know we'll touch on it, but he kind of had a bit of a resurgence in the early 80s, late 80s, right before he died. And that kind of was a part of that, and that's what that article is talking about for a little more context. But yeah, I thought it was a really poignant quote that kind of describes, like, you know, wonder if he looks back, I'm sure he did, looks back on his life and thinks about where he went wrong and looked in the mirror and the turns he took and the mistakes he made and wonders.
Well, and I wonder, though, if there is any of that. I'll get to it a little bit later, but I really wonder if there is any of that, like, if there is regret in him. But
well, it's like, he did release good music, and this album's a fantastic listen, but I wonder how much more there could have been if he had either, like, you know, stayed clean, stayed out of trouble, whatever it may be. Like, it certainly probably adds to the music to a certain point, but once it started taking away from his career and ruining his life, you wonder if he never had that wake-up call that a lot of artists that were similar had, and then, you know, switched their life around or changed it up. He never had that wake-up call.
Well, and it's interesting because that was before a lot of artists had wake-up calls. Like, I think he was a learning lesson for a lot of them.
And it happens it happens with so many people. Like, fucking, if you look at comedians, you look at Lenny Bruce and Richard Pryor and all these people that were all addicted to drugs. Musicians, same sort of thing. A lot of these jazzmen we were talking about, same sort of deal. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Okay, so during I'm gonna go back for a second.
Yeah,
here.
Go ahead.
During most of the '60s, he actually played flugelhorn and recorded music that could be classified as West Coast jazz. Now, there was a difference because East Coast was more big band. It was more Frank Sinatra. Mm-hmm. It was the Rat Pack. It was the cool kids, right? But it was like the prep kids, right? Whereas West Coast was a bunch of people that were just getting together, making fucking music that they thought would sound cool. He also acted in a bunch of Italian films, so he was fluent in Italian. Mm-hmm. So in the movie Howlers in the Dock, which was a musical comedy alongside Elke Summer, who was known for the Pink Panther sequel and one of the biggest actresses in the 60s. He also played himself in the 1963 British film Stolen Hours, which is a remake of the 1939 Bette Davis film Dark Victory. It's about a neurotic, jet-setting socialite diagnosed with a brain tumor and told she only has a year left to live. She falls in love with Dr. John Carmody and then struggles to turn her life around before she dies. So he was playing, like, he was doing these weird movies. Mm-hmm. There were like there was a lot of comedy in a lot of the stuff that he was doing.
Wow.
I watched this one Italian film that he did where, like, he's in a bathtub at one point and, like, he's passed out and this guy, like, won't shut up, and then he's like, he literally, it's dubbed in English, and he's like, shut up, old man. It's just fucking, like, really funny.
That part wasn't actually scripted.
That was just he was just fucking
they just went to his house and filmed him.
Okay, so after the accident, though, like, or after he got the fuck beat out of him,
beat up.
He worked at a gas station for 3 years until concluding that he needed to find a way back into music. So what's really interesting about this, nobody recognized him. Like, nobody recognized him at the gas station. He was one of the biggest fucking, like he was like, I would say probably about the same size as, like, what the Arkells are now.
Like,
you know,
fairly known.
Fairly known. Not everybody, but, like, the scene that he's in. No.
Well, he looked different too after. Like, he had a bit of a. He physically looked different.
Yeah.
So that was probably also had something to do with it as well.
That definitely did not help.
No, because like you said, his jaw shape had changed, and
also the gas station got robbed too, which is crazy.
Yeah.
He got robbed while at the gas station at one point, which I read in his book. Okay, so after developing a brochure, he resulting from dentures, he returned to the straight-ahead jazz that began his career. He moved to New York and began performing and recording again, including with guitarist Jim Hall. Baker returned to Europe in the 70s with his friend Diane Vavra, whom he had an on-again, off-again relationship since 1970. She accompanied him and remained with him during the last years of his life. She went on to take care of his day-to-day needs, helping him with personal care as well as with his recording and performance work. There's some really dark, haunting stuff of him in the recording studio, like near the end of his life, where he can't find the tune, and he's getting mad at the band, and she's sitting there, and she actually like helps him get into it, helps him find the pitch. In 1983, Elvis Costello, longtime fan, hired him to play a solo on his song Shipbuilding for the album Punch the Clock. In his last few years, he lived in Europe and barely went to the States, and early on May 13th, 1988, Baker was found dead on the street below his room in Hotel Prins Hendrik, Amsterdam, with serious wounds to his head, apparently having fallen from the second-story window. Heroin and cocaine were found in his room and in his body. No evidence of a struggle was found, and the death was ruled as an accident. According to another account, though, he inadvertently locked himself out of his room and then fell while attempting to cross the balcony of a vacant room adjacent to his own. A plaque is placed outside of the hotel in his memory. Now, what's super crazy about that is that was 4 months before the documentary of his life came out.
Wow.
Now, here's what I'm going to, this is the thing to wrap up about him, about his life before we get into notable tracks. He had, at the end of the documentary, there's a really crazy moment where he's sitting there talking to the director, and the director tells him, we got your methadone prescription sent here, because they're at the Cannes Film Festival, and he's playing, a gig there, right? And they're like, yeah, we got your methadone prescription sent here so that, you're going to be fine. And he's like, these last few days have been really hard. And then he pauses for a second and he goes, you want me to be truthful and honest with you, and I'm really trying, but I don't want to put that much hurt on another human being. And I was like, fuck. And that's how the documentary ends, dude.
Man, it's sad.
That's so sad.
The ending of his life and, probably the last, ever since he got beat up, that whole part of his life is just sad.
So sad.
He literally, when it fell a little bit into obscurity, and then he came back, had a little bit of a comeback, but just the way he was living his life, having to have somebody help him with his daily tasks and actually function as a human being is just sad. It's a sad existence.
Dude, it's insane too.
Someone with so much potential, it really is. It's a bummer.
And he had everything. He had the movie career. He had the
yeah. He could have been in movies. He could have been. He's not. I don't think if he had committed more to music and stayed away from the extracurriculars, which is, hard to do. Obviously, he has had some pain in his life that's causing that. He could have been, way more known, way more famous.
Yeah. And it's crazy that, I feel like we're introducing people to him.
A little bit too. Well, you introduced me to him. I was not, we listened to the record the one time we were living in Toronto, but it was totally a fresh listen to me this time through. So it's sad. It makes me sad that someone that could have been so much is wasted potential bums you out. So that's a bit of the bummer of his life, I guess.
That
kind
is
of
the
main theme of his.
That's the
second half of his life is fucking wasted potential.
Yeah. But let's get back into the positives.
Yes. Notable
track lists
tracks
and notable singles. All right, my personal favorite is Everything Happens to Me.
I like that song quite a bit as well.
So good. I discovered, this is partially how I discovered him. It was in I was in a play, and that was the only song that was played in the whole play.
What play was that?
It was called Bonds, and I played a man that was who had HIV, whose partner had died of AIDS. So it was a heavy piece. And the whole play ended with me reading a fucking poem on stage and crying. Very heavy. Anyways, Everything Happens to Me. Great song. It was composed by Tom Adar, who was a future Academy and Emmy Award nominee, with lyrics by Matt Dennis, and it was originally recorded with Frank Sinatra in the 40s. I heard the Frank Sinatra version, not nearly as good. Doesn't have like the same hit to it. Doesn't have the same punch to it. Because like, not that Frank Sinatra probably didn't have a hard life, but definitely not as hard.
No.
And like, you can hear in the lyrics in this like how hard he is. So other people who covered this include Nat King Cole, Billie Holiday, and Timothy Chalamet in the 2019 Woody Allen film A Rainy Day in New York. Now
Really had to throw that in, hey?
I really did. We got to talk about at least 3 toxic people each episode.
Yeah,
okay?
there you go.
We got our 3.
We've touched Mel Gibson, Kanye West, Woody Allen.
Yeah, we got it. So it's a melancholic song about nothing working out and taking it all with a laugh, though. My favorite line in the song is, "I telegraphed and called and sent an email or an airmail special too. Your answer was goodbye, and there was even postage due." I'm like, oh, that's so fucking harsh. Like, oh God, you have to pay to get fucking heartbroken.
Yeah, back in the day, you had to. You had to pay the fucking postage.
That's so fucking funny. Okay, so now the another track on this that I thought was really interesting. "The More I See You" was originally sung by Dick Haymes in the 1945 film Diamond Horseshoe. The film was very successful when it was released, but because of its high cost, it struggled to make a profit. It had a budget of $2.6 million. This is without inflation. And its box office was $3.15 million.
Damn.
So that would have been insane, because like that is a profit. That's like a profit of like $10 million in today's terms.
Yeah.
But it wasn't lucrative in their opinion. But Chet was actually the first person to record it.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's pretty crazy. Now, reception. This album peaked at number 25 on the Billboard charts, and it spent 1 week there. But at the time, there was like fucking hundreds of albums coming out a week that were by these record companies. Especially with jazz, there was so many albums coming out that it was like people would just like the attention span. Like, we talk about it having a quick attention span now, but my fucking God, before rock music came around, the attention span was fucking nothing. Like, people would just drop shit so quickly. All Music gave it 4.5 out of 5. These are all like in retrospect, right?
Yeah.
All Music gave it 4.5 out of 5. Pitchfork 8.3 out of 10, and the Penguin Guide to Jazz Recordings gave it 3 out of 4. Lindsay Planner of All Music said in her review, "One immediate distinction between these vocal sides and those recorded earlier in the decade for Pacific jazz is the lissom quality of Baker's playing, and most notably, his increased capacity as a vocalist. The brilliant song selection certainly doesn't hurt either. This is a quintessential title in Chet Baker's 30-plus year canon." It was remastered and reissued twice, once in 1989 and the second time in 2010. And 2010 had 4 additional recordings. This one does not have those 4 additional recordings.
So the one I was listening to on Spotify did.
Yep.
And he does a really, really great cover of "You Make Me Feel So Young."
Yes.
And it is really good, and honestly, I think it's better than the Sinatra version.
I think so too.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
He's like, that's the thing. He does a lot of Sinatra songs, and honestly, he does them better a lot of the time.
Yeah, it had a really nice quality to it. I enjoyed that version of it. Yeah, that was one of the ones that, like, obviously I knew it wasn't on this copy, but that was something I did want to talk about. I'm glad you touched on it, because I really enjoyed that cover. I thought it was really, really good.
So good. Okay, so just going to quickly touch on the culture at the time. So, like, 1958, jazz is one of the most popular genres at the time. Jazz clubs were fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
Jazz culture was very beatnik focused and quite liberal and progressive thinking on the West Coast. On the East Coast, it was very corporate, clean cut. You're wearing a suit, right? Yeah. Middle America was unsure about experimental jazz, like noodling, and they were as unsure of that as they were with rock and roll. Chet Baker kind of falls in between the noodling and the fucking classical. Yeah, like he's got like kind of a distinct, like he saw both things that were good. He saw the things that were good in both, and then made it better. Now, it kind of experienced the same sort of feeling in artists and audiences like West Coast jazz did. as rock did in the late 60s and grunge in the early 90s. There was a very distinct group of people that liked it. Everyone else was like,
Nah.
what the fuck is this?
Yeah, this is different.
Yeah.
Which we touched on too. Like, people weren't very warm to his voice and the way he sang and things like that.
Yeah.
So he was a little different.
Different. And then, so this is the tail end of it, though. So then at this point, this is where Elvis is coming out with his fucking hips. He's fucking shaking things up. He's making everybody a little fucking wet and hard. He's doing it. All right. Heroin, marijuana, reefer, weed, gauge, and jive. Those are all drug terms that came from jazz. Now, I wanted to mention this because we talked about it with his drug addiction. This is the last thing I'm going to do before we get into the album review. So I found this from an article written, or not an article. It was a thesis written by somebody at the University of Denver. It's called The Connection Between Jazz and Drug Abuse, a comparative look at the effects of widespread narcotics abuse on jazz music in the 40s, 50s, and 60s by Aaron Olson of the University of Denver. Now, many of the jazz musicians that were addicted rationalized that the use of heroin, cocaine, and morphine as a way of coping with life and said that the drugs enhanced their creativity and musicianship. Chet Baker, which he said Chet Davis, so I just got to say, I hope you didn't get a fucking 100 on this.
Well, it got published.
Aaron Olson, you dicked that one up.
Yeah, they sure did.
Chet Baker's personal account of a significant portion of his life shows that the highs and lows of a gifted musician and performer that succumbed to the ravages of heroin addiction. Baker's matter-of-fact account of his successes along with his failures as well as the numerous run-ins with the law portray a man that does not seem to recognize the effects of addiction. As Baker's relatability in performance declined, his income also declined, forcing him to concentrate on feeding his habit. Although Baker appears to be oblivious, the reader can clearly see the negative effects of his addiction, which we've talked about. I feel like we don't need to go into it too much.
No, but it basically solidified the conversation we already had.
Yeah. All right, so I don't really feel like we need to get into fun facts because we're already running pretty late on this one.
How long are we?
Just hit it in an hour.
Oh, we're fine. We're fine.
Okay.
Let's rifle it off. There's only 2 or 3.
There's only a couple, so we're good. All right, so Aaron, your fun facts.
You want to read them off to me? I don't
Yes.
remember what I put down.
Scarcely wrote his own material.
Yeah, that's something we also kind of touched on. He did mostly covers. He did write a good chunk of his material in that time frame when he was in prison in Italy. So that was kind of when he was writing and composing his own music. But other than that, he was just doing arrangements on and singing cover songs. So,
Fuck.
Yeah, so most of his stuff is covers and, reworkings of already written music.
That's fucking crazy.
So there's only a short period of time where he was actually writing and composing his own music. So that's my one fun fact. I have 2, don't I?
Yes, Costello.
We already talked about that.
Yeah.
He was buddies with Elvis Costello. He kind of helped him shoot his life up.
Yeah,
in the end of his life, try to get him back on track and get
honestly
him
did
performing
kinda
again.
help him out a lot with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so my fun fact: the only other notable person to come out of Yale, Oklahoma, was NFL Major League Baseball player, Olympian Jim Thorpe, who played in all 3 of those. He ran in the Olympics. He was like a decathlete. He played in the NFL. He played in the MLB. He was a coach in all of those. And he was also the first indigenous person to do that.
Yeah, and when there's a crazy story about Jim Thorpe, this is just something I remembered when you mentioned him. When he ran in the Olympics, somebody stole his running shoes, and he ran and won gold with 2 different pairs of shoes on. He had a different he had a different shoe on each foot, and he won the gold medal.
That's insane.
He was like a crazy athlete. He was a crazy human being. His life was pretty insane.
Dude.
He faced a lot of racism and difficulties, but he also had a really interesting life.
And he also, it's crazy because his coaching career and his playing career happened at the exact same time, which is, now would never happen.
He's probably the greatest athlete to ever live.
Yeah.
To be, a professional athlete across multiple different sports, multiple different things, going to the Olympics, playing baseball, playing football. He's probably the greatest athlete to ever live.
Oh, 100%.
It's pretty fucking cool.
That's so insane.
So him and Chet Baker from the same old town.
Him and Chet Baker.
Had the same, used to walk on the same ground.
2 of the goats.
2 of the goats.
2 of the goats. All right. Now we're going to get into the review of the album. All right. So each week we review it on technical element, musical element, lyrics, reception, album art, and does it hold up? Okay. So This one's kind of interesting because of when it was recorded. It's a little different than everything else we've touched on so far, because they were doing it in, like, all the musicians were in at the same time. They weren't layering things. They weren't looping things. So technical element, it's got to be fucking low on this one, because it's not... Somebody hit record.
It sounds. I will say though, the remastering, they did a really good job. So like we have both listened to the remastered version, but I can't imagine the original being as crystal clear, because the piano, the drums, and a lot of the instruments in the remaster is really sharp.
Oh my god!
And his vocals are really sharp. So I mean, we could probably give it a mid rating if you want, somewhere like a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, I was thinking like a 6, probably.
Yeah.
Musical element. I mean, fuck. It's musically, this is really impressive.
Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
Really
I like
nice.
it. Yeah.
I would go pretty high with the musical element of this. I would probably say I would go 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit lower. I'll meet you. I'll go 7.5.
7.5.
So we can go in between.
Okay.
So if you want to give it a 9, we can give it.
So
an
we're
8.5.
we're at a 7 right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
7.5 right
Yeah.
now. Lyrics. I mean, he didn't write them, but I mean, the lyrics are good. They hold up. There's a lot of songs that have just been like.
What do you mean they hold up? Kelly, you had to pay postage.
That fucking
I just busting your balls. I'm just busting your balls. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna go crazy on the lyrics because he didn't write them himself. They're cover songs. So,
yeah, but I mean, if we're talking about the album itself, not the artist on it, right? Like if we're reviewing the album, I would probably give it like a 7 on that.
Yeah, I can meet you there.
Yeah.
7 sounds fair.
Okay, so we're at a 7.5 still around there. Reception, I mean, it was received well, like across the board from like critics in the future, and also at the time. I mean, it charted, which is impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it did have mixed reviews from audiences just because it was new and fresh. But
yeah.
I think in hindsight, a lot of the reviews, give it more positive reviews than they probably would have at the time.
Yeah.
So like we both enjoy it. So I feel like there's a midpoint we can meet on this one, just because at the time it wasn't received as well as it is now.
I would probably honestly, I'd probably put it at like 7.5 or 8.
Yeah, let's do 7.5.
7.5.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. So album art, I mean, it's very of its time. It's kind of like. Like how many fucking albums looked like that at the time? It's kinda,
quite a few.
A few.
Yeah.
I mean, I would give it like a 4, honestly.
Yeah, 4 or 5 works for me.
4 or 5. And does it hold up? I'd say yeah.
I'd say it holds up as well.
So 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching Misfits on Vinyl. Listening
thanks
to
for
Misfits
listening,
on
guys.
Vinyl. Anal contusions.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Misfits on Vinyl, hosted by Spencer Strikert and me, Aaron Walsh, and of course produced by Sam the Tech Man, Sam Lindsay. If you like us, please rate us, subscribe to us, share us. Our socials are Misfits on Vinyl Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. If you want to send us an email with any suggestions or criticisms, we love that shit, so send it away. It's misfitsonvinyl@gmail.com. We love you guys. Thank you.